was in Tampa and I never once went to a local.
Uh,
It's just a
darn.
waste.
But thankfully for you, Greensboro has a scene.
Yeah, the scene up here is really nice.
The scene is really nice. I want to hop down. I was in Raleigh, Durham for a good number of years and helped that
Oh hell yeah.
scene for a minute.
Yeah, one
But
of these days I'm
Greensboro
gonna
was
take a trip down there.
it's I like Raleigh, Durham. Raleigh's a cooler city. Don't sorry, Durham's a cooler city. Don't go to Raleigh.
The North Carolina scene is interesting. I mean, I granted, like, I don't know what the rest of the country is like. I'm new, right? So it's cool that it seems like it's so spread out and so close knit at the same time. A lot of people willing to drive hours just to go to another city's weekly. It's really
It
cool to see.
I could give an entire lecture on the history of American tech, and if you would like, that would actually be a fun lecture. But
I don't know that that's this lecture, but I am
that's
willing to
not
listen
this
to that one.
lecture.
Okay, bet. Stream information is updated.
All right. Yeah. If you put it on Twitter, I'll match you.
Perfect.
At the very least, I can retweet.
But hey, welcome in everyone. Thank y'all for joining the voice chat to participate today. And you have one shout out on Twitch. It's Vainolia. Vainolia.
Ah, V. Yes,
Perfect. We love friendship.
she's watching. Let's see. There we go. We'll close this out. Close this out, and all good to go. All right. I'm not going to be able to see the comments in Twitch. Yeah, just the way that I'm set up, I'm not going to be able to see the comments in Twitch.
That's okay. If anyone has like questions, I can feed them to you.
Yeah,
And then
you're going to moderate.
Exactly. I'm just here to make sure everything flows. And if people in the chat, the voice chat, Doc will let you guys know when he's open for questions, or if you have questions. I don't know if you can like raise your hand in Discord or not. But he'll be here to
You
answer
can put them in
questions.
the chat. Yeah, you can ask me anytime. I'll do my best.
Okay. How about now, V? Is that better? I turned my gain up a little bit.
Let's see. Move over slightly.
A bit better. I'll crank it. How about now?
Oh my god!
Damn.
Oh, I forgot. I'm actually talking to you guys too. Is that better for everyone? Sorry.
No, you good.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Hi, Sosa.
What's going on? What's going on?
Nothing much, nothing much. Enjoying a beer.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers to that.
You said a beer?
Yeah, beer.
What you drinking?
I have a Dos Equis, an Eckies right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a beer drinker, you guys. I've been drinking Bud Light and Budweiser. Can you believe it?
Nah, bro. You need to stop that. You need to get some Modelo in your life.
Really? Like it?
Modelo's good.
Modelo
For a
isn't
macro
bad.
brew, I mean,
Modelo Negra, bro.
Oh,
That's
actually,
pretty good.
I did like Modelo Negro. When I went to Austin, we ended up getting that beer. I think. Oh no, cap. I had that in Dallas. Me and my friend had Modelo Negras with lime. It was good. It was good. Cannot cap. Okay, I posted it, Doc. Tagged you in it.
Brilliant.
We're good
Retweeted
to
it.
go. Perfect, perfect, perfect. And so great. Whenever you're ready, you're good to start. I have the stream running, and so this will be recorded from the start to the finish.
You can give the introduction in a typical symposium. The master of ceremonies gives an introduction, and then I take it away. So you are welcome to provide an introduction for me.
Okay, yeah. Wouldn't mind, wouldn't mind. Okay, okay. Okay. Thank you all so much for coming in today. Welcome to the Baddies R Us Discord, and welcome to the Hot Trojan Twitch. Today we have a special treat by yours truly, Docmassacre, aka Ling Massacre, aka Luria on Twitter. Luria _ Justin, excuse me. And we will be going over the elements of style. This will be a presentation led by Doc where he will go over the different styles of play in Tekken, how they come together as different combinations, how they complement each other, and all that and then some. And so without further ado, we have Docmassacre.
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay. Typical time for clap. Uh, Today's talk, I wanted to cover basically the foundations of neutral. So we're not going to get into combos too terribly much, not too much into heat or mechanics. That is for your own personal diving, and we can do that in a different lecture. But for today, we're covering neutral. So let's get into it. All right, I start out with this presentation looking at a book here. Here we have Strunk and White, The Elements of Style. This is a book on grammar, and this is an excellent book on grammar. And so what I'm going to be providing for you today is a lexicon, a way of talking about Tekken so that you can converse amongst yourselves at a level higher than just saying Brian's Ford 2 is good. Mark Berker's good. You want to get above talking about individual moves and start talking about styles, tactics, and within that is a framework of using particular moves. But we're going to go a level higher than that, talking about chunking, so that your brain is thinking tactically rather than mechanically. Do? All right. Why should you listen to me? You don't have to listen to me. Do things your own way. But this is a little bit about the author. He is a condescending, pretentious, pedantic, sanctimonious jerk with a heart of gold. I happen to know my particular weakness. I'm vain, and I've accepted that. I'm an Okizeme lord. I continuously post videos on Twitter, showing different technology that we got going on. I'm an unrepentant shit talker. Been tournament active for a few years now. Yeesh. And I am an actual doctor of philosophy. Nice to meet you all. The doctor title is well earned. So, so measuring like why you should be listening to me. Don't listen. This is just years of experience talking. You can take it or leave it for what you will. But I do happen to be the man who stopped Cody Vu's heart. I did see Evo Moment 37 in person. I wandered the desert with Ryan Hart. I held a private tournament on an island and paid for their room and board and flight. I helped out in a cantina in Italy and played Tekken, and I also got fifth at Evo. So I'm not terrible. All right. So I'm going to show a graphic now, and this will take you a minute to digest. So take your time and just follow along, but don't feel like you need to understand it all at once. All right. So this is a Cartesian plot. On the y-axis, we have frame, and basically frame advantage. So I'm using frames here as a measurement of time, and specifically the time advantage you have over your opponent, where at the very top, you've got plus frames, and at the very bottom, you've got minus frames when you're really behind. On the x-axis, we have range. That is how far you are away from your opponent. Range 0 is right in their face, and range 3 is about as far away from them as you can get, especially in Tekken 8. The range 3 sort of got moved on you because now everybody can reach you. But it is typically a body length. Range 1 is 1 body length, range 2 is 2 body lengths, range 3 is 3 body lengths. So what I'm going to be talking about today, and there's a general shape to this, so I'm going to use my cursor to help me out here. We have 3 cardinal directions, and I've color-coded them with the same colors as the Italian flag. We've got aggressive styles, which are in red. We've got countering styles, which are in white, and also called stalker. And then we have more passive styles or defensive styles shown in green. And what's this saying? Well, the passive styles are further away in range. That's where you're safer. There are some where you're up close, and for each of, I'll get into it in a little bit later, but for each of these branches, there's always one style that violates the rule. And I'll talk about that in a bit. Red are the aggressive styles, where you go from being um, at range 1 all the way to range 0, where you're being a swarmer, basically in their face. And these are names that have been used around the FGC in some various parts, but I'm trying to conglomerate them here so that everybody shares a lexicon and we can all talk about it together. And then you've got stalking styles, where you've got counter hit fishing, sidestep stalking, sabaki evasion stalking, where you're letting your opponent act first, so it's okay if you're at a frame disadvantage. By letting them act first, you allow them to make a mistake on which you capitalize. So again, you're further back in the advantage of time. Where if you're a swarmer, you want to keep plus frames, as many plus frames as you can, because you want to keep your turn. And then where these three meet, that would be true neutral, where you get things like check turtling, where you're constantly just throwing out mid checking pokes, footsie, where you incorporate some lows in order to generate some damage over time. Keep out is more of a ranged based turtling technique. And then you've got block punishment on here, which is just a sign that says at this particular frame, you're going to get hurt unless you're at range 3. So that gives you a bounds on where the styles are. No style is going to let you be plus 15 forever, and no good style will let you be minus 15. So I'm throwing that out there, and I'll go through each of these styles individually and talk about them at depth. All right, classification. So here on the left-hand side, I've broken these out in terms of pitbull, which is a common term used for aggression. Stalker, which is this more, I won't say passive style, but it's a reactive style. And turtling, which is a defensive style. And then up above, I've got sort of a characteristic, an attribute for pitbull, stalker, and turtle. As what pace do each of these have? What distance do each of these have? Damage, emotion, and focus. Pace, the pitbull tries to take initiative. The pitbull always wants it to be his turn. Where stalker is reactive. You're letting somebody go first, and then you're capitalizing on a mistake. And turtle is passive, is that even if they do something, the error has to be pretty egregious for you to capitalize on it. It's not so much a twitch reaction as something more methodical, slow, turtleish. Distance, pit bulls need proximity. In this game, less proximity. But typically, yeah, proximity is because you've got strings that need range 0 in order to keep things up. Stalkers run a fixed distance, so they zone. They are looking for you to make a mistake at range 2, maybe 2.5, close enough where they can whiff punish you, but not so close that they get caught up in a blender. And then turtles typically are expansive. Again, there's always one style that violates the rule, and I'll talk about it. But turtles like to generate space. That's where they're safest. Damage. Pitbulls want to inflict damage. Makes sense. Get in there. Get your damage. Stalkers want to intercept, and typically for a lot of damage all at once. Turtles mitigate damage. This is a race. This is a race to 0. Who reaches 0 life first? And the turtle's idea is to slow down their own loss of life slower than the other guys. And then they win. Emotion. What sort of emotion do you want to convey with these styles? Pit bulls want to intimidate. Makes sense. Stalkers want to control. They want, if they can control the space, if they can control the emotion, if they can control the pace, they win. They just do. Turtles want to provoke. Turtles are a fun branch because they're particularly trolly. They want you to make a really bad mistake and try to come in sometimes in a bad way. So they're looking to instigate an emotional response in the opponent. Focus. What are you looking at? What are you thinking about? Pit bulls tend to be abstract in as far as their thought. The idea is that you get in there and just toss moves out. You know, in a blender. It's like you're not really thinking, I'm gonna go high, I'm gonna go low, I'm gonna go mid, low, mid, low, mad. You're not thinking in terms of level. It's more of a feel that you're just not exactly placing a wager. You just know in your head that the more moves that you throw out there, the more damage you're going to do. Whether or not that's something that's brawling, where you're throwing out big damage, or something like swarming, where you're keeping initiative. You're just throwing moves out there. So brawlers and pit bullers tend to get a bad rap that they're not using their noggin too terribly much. They are using their noggin, but they're using it in a different way. They're using their resources elsewhere. That's an advantage of being a pit bull. You don't use as much resource. Stalkers, it's very definite focus. They are focused. Stalkers are looking for whiff. They're looking for any particular patterns that you have and to capitalize on them. They're reactive. They need to be focused on the opponent in order to see what they're doing. And then turtles tend to be acute in their focus. They are waiting for something, the same way that the stalker is. But, and this is why turtles and stalkers tend to be lumped together. They're a little bit different because they're on different parts in time and space. But they do pair well. Most turtle and stalker styles pair well together. But a turtle style just wants to be safe. Their focus is on themselves, not the opponent. All right. So I've got on the very left-hand column frame. This is the frames in which you generally operate or perform this style. So you can be at +9, where you have initiative and you want to maintain initiative. This is just a general thought. You're never going to always be in +9. And then you've got go all the way down to -9. That's when you're at a temporal disadvantage. You're behind the clock. And then I've got range. So you notice for Pitbull, let's say I'll use my cursor over here. There we go. So we've got range going from range 0 to range 2. And frame advantage going from +9 to about 0 to -9. So we're getting behind in the clock, but we're getting farther away for pit bulls. And I'll go through each of the individual styles. So Swarmer, and some other names for this particular style: Lockdown, Blender. It really depends on the game on which of these that you use. Successive attacks give you plus frames. And you just keep attacking. That's what a Swarmer does. Casino. Casino is high risk, high reward, positive expected value. So for those of you who haven't taken statistics, let me describe expected value. Expected value is if you randomly roll the dice, what are you, let's say a dice, a 6-sided dice, what are you likely to see? Well, sometimes you'll get 1, sometimes you'll get 6, but if you average it all out, what you're most often going to see is either a 3 or a 4. And the expected value is 3.5. It's a positive expected value. So if we're talking about this in terms of Tekken, in a particular situation, if I go low, let's say with Demo Man, I'm going to do damage. But if you block it, I'm going to take damage. Let's say there's a mid. Let's say I go Shredders. Mid shredders. If you're ducking, I'm going to do damage. If you're not ducking, I'm going to take damage. And if you sum up all four of those, all four of those possibilities, where you inflict damage going low, you inflict damage going mid, you take damage going low, and you take damage going mid. If you average all of those up together, that's an expected value. And what you want for a 50-50 situation is a positive expected value. So the more times you put somebody in a situation where they're guessing, you win over time, unless they're good at guessing you. Grappler, pretty self-explanatory. It's been around since forever. Everybody knows the grappler style. You want to be as close as possible. Range 1, range 0. Generate that opportunity, an advantage, and then you condition them to not duck, and then you throw them. A bully. A bully has not been around forever. Although I guess you could say in 2D games there are bullies as well. Bullies are, it's a style where you push somebody's back to the wall. If a person's back is to the wall, the number of styles that they can use is limited. They can't run away anymore. They can't stalk anymore. They can't stalk using range. So it removes a lot of their abilities. And in addition to that, you've got a lot more damage potential if their back is to a wall. I don't need to explain too terribly much, but there are safe mid-splats that can do 60 damage if their back is to the wall. Otherwise, they're doing a measly 15 damage. It's in your best interest if a bully gets you to the wall. Brawler. This is a medium risk, medium reward, positive expected value. A little bit different than Casino. So these are people who are okay eating minus 13. Eating minus 13 lows, or minus 13 punishment. People who use hatchet kick, for example, Brian players. People who, they'll hop kick, sure. And they'll throw out big, meaty mids, not necessarily to be fast, but just to generate as much potential damage as possible, while being relatively safe. And then Abare. All right, so this is where we get into what was it? Daytona?
Yes, sir. Dandy Raytona.
Dandy Raytona. What Dandy Raytona called mashing, and most people call mashing. It's not mashing. Mashing has no intent. It's what a child does to a controller. And I'm not going to belittle anybody's work by saying mashing, but it's a fun colloquialism, so it stands. Pressing is a term that I've tried to get people to say instead of mashing. It is keeping initiative even though you are at a frame disadvantage. It is that hop kick when you're at -7. It mathematically doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if you've got a read on what level, meaning low, medium, high, they're going, then you can practice Abare. If you've got a read on what they're doing with their plus frames, you can interrupt them with some sort of highly punishable 10-frame counter hit launcher. These exist in the game. Couple of very well-known Abare players, Rip, for example. He's famous for his down 2-3. He's got a very good sense of using down 2-3 with law, even if he's at minus frames, because it's a 10-frame counter hit launcher that's highly punishable, but you're willing to eat that if you've got a good read. It's an offensive style, and it's a lot more popular now in Tekken 8, and I'll explain a little bit why once I get a little bit further in this presentation and further in my drink.
Cheers.
Okay. Cheers. All right, Stalker. All right, we're going to go from -9, so this is a frame disadvantage, down to a high frame advantage. Okay, and we're at range 0 to start out with, so different than the aggressive styles, with the sole exception of Abare, which is an exception. You don't want to be at minus frames when you're at range 0 if you want to maintain initiative or be a pit bull. But you can be a stalker. Again, this is reactive or having a good read. It's it's the difference. So the difference between a read and a reaction is sort of blurred. Like you can get some information without getting all the information. Did they twitch? Did they move? Are they agitated? So this is data that you have in your mind that you're using to process what their reaction is going to be. Um, if they've got a pattern, um, then that would be something that you are reacting to, not something that you're just putting out statistical numbers and getting an expected value, like you're actually reading the room. At the scariest of all of these is an evasion stalker. So this would be a sidestep AOP Ling, or a Steve that uses sway right. These are movements that get you out of the way pretty quickly. And there are sway back moves that do this. Um, plenty of examples, but you're reading something, and usually the evasion is highly punishable. You can't block, or there's some disadvantage to it, like you do have to read it. And then we get into sidestep stalking. This is to set up a sidestep, confirm, and take big damage. All right, so what do I mean by that? Let me see if this works. All right. Oh, hello. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yes, sir. Sure can.
Yep.
All right, all right. So to give you an idea of what sidestep stalking looks like, you're still up close, and you still might be at something like -5, -4. But you want to be real close. So let's say here I am at -6. That's a little not good enough. -5, getting there. All right. -9, nope. -4, here we are. All right, it pushes back too much for my taste, but this will give you an idea. So here I am at -4. I can still step at -4, and then I commit to the step afterwards. And I'm looking. I'm just looking for a twitch. I'm looking for anything. I'm reading the opponent's reaction, and then launching. So if they throw out a jab, I'm ready, for example, to use a long range launcher to punish them for something like a jab. So I am reading an input, but the reaction times, you can choose what type of sidestep stalker you are. Are you making an educated guess? Oh, I still want to stay in practice mode. Why am I getting out of practice mode? I wanted to hit Alt-Tab.
I suspect you're going to go collect your free hat.
I am not going to go into Tekken Shop ever. I've made that commitment to myself. I am never clicking on Tekken Shop. Ever, ever, ever. You all are calling it free. You get a free hat. You paid $70, but it is a free hat. I never felt more lied to in my life.
And see, with that mentality, you already missed your free shirt. Isn't that crazy?
All right, I'll tap. All right, we're back. Okay, so that gives you an idea of sidestep stalking. Sabaki stalking. So this is using a power crush, a reversal, a parry, a low parry for big damage. There are a ton of Sabaki moves. Xiao Yu, off the top of my head, all I can think of is her back turn forward 1+2. Jin has a bunch. What is it? Forward 1+2, where you're Sabakiing, you're parrying a punch. It's a move that has an auto parry to it. Power crushes work much the same way, only you're taking a little bit of damage for it. Reversals, same thing. It just depends where you are in time to be what type of Sabaki you're using. Most power crushes start up at 9 frames. Reversals start up at 2 frames. Low parries are pretty quick. So just depending on where you are in terms of initiative or what type of move you're expecting, that's the type of Sabaki you'd expect to be using in that scenario. Counter hit stalking. All right, counter hit stalking is set the rhythm, watch the twitch, use fast counter hits for big damage. All right, so counter hit stalking is a little bit different than brawling. So you've got Kazuya. Kazuya's down forward 2. It's fast, it's mid, it does a ton of damage if it lands. And you've got a bunch of frame traps. For example, this would be in the realm of a frame trap, but a frame trap is more of a brawler mentality than it is a counter hit stalker. But they share similar concepts. Like you're looking for them to do something, to press where they shouldn't be pressing, and to take advantage of that. So you need to have more plus frames to be able to do that. So typically this will be when you have initiative and you're listening to their button press, looking to see if their hands twitch, if you're sitting next to the person, or again, do you feel an agitation from them? Or are you reading a pattern from them that they press? That would be a counter hit stalker. Then whiff punishment, or a whiff stalker. This is the highest form of stalker. Through superior movement and reaction, you confirm that they whiffed a move, and you launch them. It requires the fastest reaction time, the best execution, and the largest degree of nerve. It's incredibly difficult to maintain this particular style for a long period of time because it requires the greatest amount of focus. And then lastly, we have what violates the rule. So for all of the other, you can see that for evasion through whiff stalking, evasion, sidestep, sabaki counter, and whiff, we've been moving in terms of range farther and farther away. Whiff stalking, you want to be far away. You want them to whiff. Where's the best place for them to whiff? In range 3, when you're just waiting there with a long range launcher. Rhythm is what violates the rule, and it violates the rule by being close and to have a large degree of initiative. So for example, if you're at plus 15 guard, plus 10 guard, where you've rocked them, they've blocked something that's heavy, and you can't do damage to them, they can still block, but you've got a ton of time to do whatever it is you want to do. You just press forward, and then you wait, and then you push a button. So you're trying to hit someone's offbeat. You're hunting on the offbeat, and defying the expectation. People expect you're going to use the initiative to attack. That's what a pit bull does. A stalker doesn't. A stalker will try to wait you out and hit you on the half beat when you're not expecting it. There's a player that we have in New England, Aiden, AED. He happens to be particularly good at this style. He's got a very funky rhythm about him, where he'll hit a Brian back 1 on block. He'll use back 1 with Brian, and it will be blocked. And then he'll just push forward. And then at some moment, he'll push 3, which will input his forward 3, and out will come forward 3, a mid counter hit. And that's just happened to be when you decided to try to press your initiative, and you get counter hit for gobs and gobs of damage. This would be fighting on an off rhythm.
And Doc, before you go into the turtling concepts, we have 2 questions in the chat. Is now's a good time?
Yep, now's a good time.
Perfect. First one, we have Dandy Raytona. He says, if I tend to feel my personal attributes scattered throughout the spectrum, could that be an issue of self-attribution, focus, or is this generally a dynamic scale?
Reparation, that shows that you haven't had your cohesive moment yet. If you're struggling to find a tactic, go down with pen and paper, using this lexicon or whatever lexicon is comfortable to you, and I'll describe how you can pair these particular styles. So no one person is just a rhythm stalker. No one person is just a swarmer. It makes for silly. Like, it would be silly if somebody attempted that. They wouldn't be very good. What you do in Tekken and any fighting game is to establish an expectation in your opponent and then violate it. this is how you generate an advantage, is that the world is not the same as what they think it is, and you hurt them for it. So, if you're having trouble generating a style or having a vision or um, staying consistent throughout a match, don't worry about being consistent. You're not supposed to be. Um, but you do need to have, uh, I would say, a plan. And you can try out various things and see what fits you in order to generate your own style. And I'll speak to that a little bit later. But really, without digging it in with you, um, I would say the best course of action you can make is after this presentation, sit down with a pen and paper, come up with a list of 4 moves for the styles that you want, for each style that you want to use, and then pick 3 of those styles that you like using, and then pair them together. So all in all, 12 moves. That's it. You don't need more than that. And then you'll just make a ring of those 3 moves. I'll talk about that later, and just switch between those styles, where you're constantly establishing an expectation with one style, and then violating that expectation using another style, and then you just keep moving between those 3 styles. And I'll talk about that. What's the next question?
Before our next question, I want to say Dandy's response was, "That's a very interesting concept. I will try this out."
Uh, Happy to hear it.
Our next question comes from Clarai, based in Dallas, I believe. He says, "Do these styles apply for the player or more so the character? Question mark. Thinking about certain characters, it feels like you are generally forced into a specific style or two to execute their game plan the most effectively."
Sometimes that's the case. I happen to be a person who is fond of violating preconceived notions about a character. In Tekken 7, I had a particularly good Hwarong, I would say. And it was a turtle Hwarong. And you just don't find too many turtle Hwarongs because most people expect Hwarong to be a swarmer with using down 3-4. I hardly ever used down 3-4. I liked his other moves that I looked at them and saw a turtle. It's like backlash is an amazing move. Right foot forward 4-4 is an amazing move. It's an 11 frame high counter hit launcher back in 7. Now it's not a launcher. That's amazing. That's 11 frames. And it does good damage. And it's got good range on it. And I've got plenty of options afterward. So I looked at those things and I said, this seems like what a turtle would use. So you don't have to feel confined with what everybody else, with the conclusions everybody else arrives at. I happen to be somebody who loathes authority. It's the Davka in me. Like that's a Yiddish word. It I like being contrarian. It's what gives me joy in life. I don't know what to tell you. So I'll hear something that an expectation that people have about a character, and I'll go in and I'll see if I can violate the expectation and generate damage in that way. And I found that with Hwarong in 7. So don't feel beholden to what the crowd is doing. Next question, or that might finish it up.
We may have one more. Danny Raytona had a second question, but I'll come back to his in just one moment. V has made some statements here regarding you get clocked by forward 3 and you die. I believe that was a reference to AED.
Yes.
And then they stated, before we get to turtling, do you see players like Project Runaway as a different type of Brian player than the average high-tier Brian player?
Do I see Project Runway?
Yeah, Project Runaway as a different type of Brian player than the average high-tier Brian player.
I do not know this player. Is this a local player? Wait, I'm not misinterpreting this question. Do I see Runaway Brian as... Is it possible to have a Runaway Brian? Yes, it is possible to have a Runaway Brian.
I fear they may be talking about a specific player. Oh, he says... They say it's PRA West Coast Tag 2 and Tekken 7 player.
PRA West Coast Tag 2 Tekken player. I will say that I'm based out of Boston, and I don't spend a ton of time on the West Coast, or haven't in a few decades. Uh, so I'm not too familiar with this player. I I do feel like a Turtle Brian is perfectly acceptable, but I would really need to take a look at their footage to be able to speak more on the topic.
Thank you. I'll find a clip and maybe we will follow that up at a later date.
Well, we can dissect that. That would be fun.
Perfect.
All right, let's get into Turtle. As long as we're talking about Turtle. Footsie. All right, so let's go through the axes again. +5 down to -15. So this is the closest to clock neutral that we're going to get. Range 2 to range 3. Turtles like being far away. And you've always got one that violates the rule, and that's a wall turtle. All right, let's go into Footsie. Footsie, low risk, low reward. So just how you've got Casino is high risk, high reward. You've got Brawler, which is medium risk, medium reward. And then you've got Footsie, which is low risk, low reward. Keep out. Push opponent out of range to mitigate big damage. That's what a keep out turtle does. They use moves in order to establish a range and keep you out of the range while avoiding being whiff punished. And then if you can't close the gap and you're a swarmer, how are you going to generate damage? You can't. Check turtles. So check turtles is the whole concept behind keeping them honest. It is the best way to sum it up. They use mids. Those mids are safe, and those mids are fast. So here you are at -2, and you think that you're going to keep up your initiative? Nah, check. All right, I can't press. You think that you're going to fish out some sort of you're going to duck one of my highs and then launch me for it? Nah, mid, check. And you just keep checking. Check, check, check. And over time you generate damage. And a check turtle isn't throwing out anything risky, and if a person just sits there and blocks mid all day, they can't do any damage. But what it keeps people from doing is establishing their style, especially if there's something like a particular type of, like a sidestep stalker. If they just throw out mids that track, it's like you're going nowhere. You're not launching me. All right, and then runaway. Runaway turtles. They just generate as much distance as possible, and they just keep generating distance, and you can't touch them. It's very similar to a keep out, but they're not using any particular moves to do this. They're using their movement. So somebody who's got a particularly good Korean backdash or some sort of special movement. Xiao Yu is with the person with whom I'm most familiar. She's got spin away, but plenty of moves that generate distance so that people get nervous about closing the gap, and you end up using the clock to your advantage. It's a particular style that's good for running out clock. And then lastly, what violates the rule is a wall turtle. Is they block, and they block punish. They break throws, and they parry that one low. So wall turtles are what happens at the end of a match. It's low on time, you're way ahead in life, but they've got rage, and they've got their heat, and they can use it. So you just hold back. That's it. No movement. Not even like you can use block punish, but you don't really have to. You can just hold back. That's it. And the only thing that your focus is focused on is breaking throws and seeing that one low that they need in order to come back and win. Some sort of stupid snake edge. You're just looking for that snake edge. That's it. And if you do that and break all their throws and they can't use snake edge, then they can't really do a lot of damage to you. And so you win at the end of the match if it's low on time. So a lot of these turtle styles are more advantageous the shorter on time you are. All right. So we've covered each of the individual styles that I'll talk about today. All right. Time and space. So this is a recap of basically the same thing that I just told you. So do you remember this plot? This is the same plot I had up before. But now you get a better understanding of what each of these things are and where they sit in terms of time and space. And just standing back and looking at this plot, you can see where the rules get violated. So here we have green is turtle, what we were just talking about, and you have true neutral here at 0 frame advantage in range 1, and then you go far away and you've got runaway turtles, and then you violate the exception down, oh, let me get my cursor, down at range 0 at -15. Doesn't matter if you're at -15 guard, you're just holding back. That's all. That's fine. And then for the aggressive styles, you get more and more frame advantage in time and closer to your opponent. It's where you arrive at swarmers. Casino, you need initiative in order to do the move, the 50-50 that you want to do. And then what violates the rule is you don't need frame advantage in order to try to generate initiative, and that's a barre, or what some people colloquially call mashing. So you can just sit back and sort of appreciate the time and space Cartesian plot in front of you. All right. Now, we're going to talk about something else. We're going to talk about resource. And this is what you have that you can use to your advantage. So all of the tools at your disposal. And what do I mean? Do I mean moves? No, I mean you personally as a human. All right, let's get into it. All right. So I have here a couple of bars. I've got life bar, which is your chief resource in the game. You run out of this resource, you are dead. That's the game. If you still have some of this resource, you're still in it. Those are just the rules. The only other thing that you have that operates like this is clock, but very rarely are you going to get to the end of your clock. More often or not, somebody will reach the end of their life bar. Focus. All right. Focus is your ability to compute stuff, your ability to think. You've got a finite amount of it. I hate to tell you, you're not brilliant. You're an idiot just like me. And you can only think about so much before your brain just doesn't want to work anymore. And people hit this. People hit this wall. This is a physical. This is some. By physical, I don't mean relating to physics. I mean it's real. It's in you. If you don't sleep well, if you do not eat well, if you do not hydrate, if you do not take care of yourself, you're going to have less focus. It's just a finite resource until you hit rock bottom and see how well you play Tekken then. See how well you do anything. All right? The other mental resource that you have is information. If you're facing somebody new, you don't have too much information. You see what character they pick. That's information. You hear something about them from your friend. That's information. You see a pattern that they have. That's information. You see a habit they have. That's information. That's good information. Habits are the worst. Habits are things that you aren't conscious of. At least with patterns, they might actually be cognitively trying to establish a pattern in order to violate it. But if you catch something that they aren't aware of, that's a habit. And you can put that in your pocket and use it when you need to. Positional advantage. All right. There are optimal ranges and suboptimal ranges. If you're a swarmer, you want to be in range 0. That's an optimal range. That's a resource you have. You can use that resource to generate damage. And at the end of using that resource, oftentimes, you will have used it up and you will be in a suboptimal position again. So for example, if you're swarming and you put in 4, 5, 6 moves, eventually you're going to run out of initiative and you're going to have to use a move that is suboptimal, pushes them away, does something, or they knock you back. And there you are at a suboptimal position again. And you have to build that resource back up in order to generate damage. So think about what sort of range. I mean, I've got a plot not too many slides ago that shows you what your optimal range is, and think of it as a resource to use in order to generate damage. Wall position. Wall position is another resource that you have. If their back is to the wall, then you can hurt them. You're probably at an advantage, unless there's something like a reverse bully, which I didn't put up there as a style. A reverse bully is somebody who can generate damage when their back is to the wall. Asuka is a famous example of this, or Steve with his position switch, or anybody with a throw that can change positions when they're on the wall. You can back up. There's nothing to stop you from backing up and then trying to reverse positions with someone in order to generate an advantage, especially if you know that they'll let you throw them and then they'll just you trust that they'll break it. That's fine. And the last resource you have is your line. What do I mean by line? If you draw a line between you and your opponent, that is your line. Extend that line all the way behind your opponent and extend that line all the way behind you. That line, there are some lines that are good for you and some lines that are bad for you. If your back and your line is in the pathway of a breakable wall, there is a potential for you to eat a lot of damage. You don't want your line to be going through a breakable wall. You want your line to be sort of askew to a wall, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. That does the minimum amount of damage if they manage to launch you, and that's the line that you want to keep. All right, some other resources that you have, and then after this I'll ask some questions because this is a lot. Some other resources that you have. Comeback, or also known as momentum. Momentum's a resource. It exists, it's real. Sorry to tell you, but sometimes people feel like a freight train, and that's a resource they have. And then it runs out. Heat is a resource. It's basically meter. A lot of games have meter. This is meter in Tekken. Welcome. Clock. Clock is a resource, especially if you're ahead on life and the clock is winding down. Sometimes the clock is on your side. And if you're a turtle, that's what you want. This is a resource if you're a turtle. If you're a swarmer, less so. And then X Factor. This is something within you. And this could just be a special trait. Some people have them. Some people, if you activate just the right condition, they become really difficult to beat. And it's just that special something. And if you know what that is in you, you could be a really good player. You could be that special sort of player if you know what it is that turns on the button, flips the switch, activates heat. He's on fire, NBA Jam. Like, that's X Factor. All right. Any particular questions at this juncture?
We do have a question from Danny Raytona. I was gonna hold this one for when you started to talk about styles and how they complement. But we can definitely get into it now if you'd like to.
Let's hold off on it until I get to complement. Anything on resource, and then I'll get into complementary styles in a bit.
Does anyone in the Twitch chat or the Discord chat have any questions on resources? Anything like pertaining to how can I use, maybe if I'm running out of focus, how can I XX, or anything about, if I'm on a bad line, what can I do, etc., etc. But if you don't have any questions now, that's perfectly fine.
That's fine. I'll get into each one of these resources and we can talk about it then.
I believe now we are good to go.
All right.
Oh wait, we have someone typing in the chat.
Oh, okay. I'm waiting with bated breath. I'm almost out of scotch. I need a refill.
Cheers to that. I'm actually almost out of this first round of Eki Eki, so I had to get the second one.
All right, everybody take a breather. This is a lot.
We do have some compliments from Danny Raytona. He says the resource explanations were very clear and very useful.
I'm glad.
And then Blasphemic says, or excuse me, his name is Blasphemic Black. He is based out in Austin. He says, my concern with the resources is, what do I do when I'm down on, let's say, info? How can I sway the info back in my favor without getting too far out of my, quote, zone, unquote?
Information gathering is a skill, and being in a situation where somebody has information on you and you do not have information on them, I would say you've already made your error. Uh, that requires you need to be very experienced as a player in order to come back from that. If you do know in your heart that they have a read on you and they're just reading you like a book, you got to change your game plan. That's a particularly damning resource to be low on is information. Um, other other things you can do, I do. So this is more of uh, advice to give as far as your scene is concerned. Um, Having your scene help you with scouting at a tournament is very advantageous. If you know that you're going to be fighting somebody later in a bracket, having anyone look at their play, you get some information, and usually very good information. You can watch your future opponent play, um, and that's advantageous. In this day and age, you can look up YouTube if they happen to be somebody who posts uh, their own video or video of themselves playing. Ghost is now a resource. It's not a resource I plan on using, but it is a resource if you want to understand somebody's play better. But if it's a complete unknown and you're walking into the unknown, and I'll talk about this when I talk about info, but the more time you have, the more information you're going to get if you're collecting it actively with your focus, which is a resource. Um, the more time, and if you can play in such a way that doesn't divulge too much information, if you can play without habit, so this, uh, or play in a manner that is not you at top level, then that is a good way of hiding your ability for people who may be monitoring you. That's a very tournament centric sort of view on it, but I believe that answers your question.
And let's see. Just have comments in the chat. Acro, based in Colorado, says, thinking of the whole game as a resource management game is dope. Fighting games in general can be organized this way.
Yes, I did intend for this to be more applicable across more than just Tekken. Instead of heat, you can use meter, but comeback factor, clock, range, wall. In a 2D game, your line is pretty fixed. Uh, but yes, these concepts, the idea of time and space is universal to all fighting games, if not all strategy games, if not shooters. Um, and then other concepts you have here, such as resource, really applicable in any game. You'll find that the further on you are in any art, um, maybe it's Tekken, maybe it's swordsmithing, maybe it's using a yo-yo. It doesn't matter as long as it's something that you dedicate yourself to and has depth to it. You'll find that it has applications to everything else. The unity of all things is very Spinozist, which I dig. But everything is everything was the Lauryn Hill. I used to misunderstand that when I was a younger man, saying that what you see is all there is. But I was wrong. I didn't understand it at the time, and it took decades in order for me to understand it. It's saying that everything is everything else. Everything is baseball. Everything is woodworking. If you apply yourself to woodworking for 20 years and you're dedicated to it and build a life with it, you'll find that what you've done in woodworking applies everywhere else in your life. that that's a little bit deep. You might have to digest that a bit.
That's an easy one, Doc. Tekken is love, Tekken is life. Now that's a deep one if it's a
Tekken is
metaphor.
baseball. All right, let's continue on. Take a deep breath. Everybody, take a deep breath. Reset their brain.
We do have one more for resources if you have time for it.
Oh yeah.
Okay, super. We have Loose Leaf here. I'm so sorry, Loose Leaf. I don't know where you're based at. But Loose Leaf asks, do you tend to use different styles for different resource situations, like turtling up with a big life lead at the end of a round, or should you try to maintain your style consistently throughout?
Different styles. Absolutely the case. You want complementary styles. You're not always going to be in the same situation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, having having so the word style. This is troublesome. All right, I used the word style. These are archetypes that I'm talking to you about. Swarmer is an archetype. Your personal style, what fits you, the art that you want to create, and the style, your fashion sense, what you want to have, who you are on the canvas is the word is also style, but they mean different things. If you want to be true to yourself, I really feel I've yet to encounter a person who was just so shallow that they could they were perfectly content only describing themselves by Death Fist only. Like people dedicate themselves to Death Fist only, but there's more. I've never just seen a fighting game player just be happy with just being shallow with one archetype. It'll really come out as what you are, what you are as a person will come out. It will over time. It just you can't help it. It will come out on the screen, and as you are exposed to more and more situations, stimuli, you will evolve. You will grow. You will learn. You will adapt. I don't like the word adapt, but you will grow. Um, it the idea is that with conscious conscious effort, dedicated effort, you cultivate yourself. It's not just you're exposing yourself in the elements and then you undergo some sort of adaptation like evolution. Yeah, that can happen, but you want to do it with intent. So cultivation is a word that I like much more. And you will cultivate yourself having been exposed to these different stimuli in order to use these archetypes as elements of grammar in order to write the story that you want to tell. There. I hope that answered it. All right, let's continue down the path of resource. All right. Let's go. All right. Life bar. Now, this is another good 2D plot, another good Cartesian plot. This is your life bar on the y-axis and your opponent's life bar on the y-axis. From going from least life bar, meaning you're almost dead, to most life bar. And when the match starts out, for everyone, is you start out with both players having the most amount of life bar. That is the early match. And you will find that some styles are better in the early match, and some styles are better in the later match. And you can shift and I use the word style and archetype interchangeably. For personal style, just assume that I mean style. And when I say style, otherwise talking about these little text box on the screen, assume I mean archetype. So, strategy success, victory, strategy failure, rage. Like what's your optimal style? People can do a lot of damage in rage. There are some people that their style, what fits them, works the best when they have a huge comeback potential. Brawlers work this way. Is they do a ton of damage and they're just going to keep trying to do a ton of damage until they succeed. So oftentimes they will experience come from behind victories because that's just the nature of how their damage happens, probabilistically in time in these large chunks. Let's see, low health equivalent risk. So you want to engage in less risky behavior the lower you are in life, and you can engage in more risky behavior the higher up you are in life. What do I mean by that? Your life has a different value depending on how much of it you have. I'll give an example. If you need to buy a car and you make $20,000 a year, that is more expensive than if you make $1 million a year. Duh. But for the wealthy person and the poor person, and I don't mean to use the word poor, somebody makes 20,000. Poor is a frame of mind. For somebody who makes $20,000 a year, that car, it costs the same amount as it does for the wealthy person, but it's the relative nature of that gives a different value to each person, even though the price tag's the same. So value and price mean different things. If you only have 5 health left and you use a move that's minus 10, you're dead because they jab punish you. That's not the case when you're high up on life, so you can afford more risk. So what has value to you is different depending on the amount of life you have, and also the amount of life your opponent has. If you both are low on life, then maybe you can afford to be a little more risky, because one hit could mean the difference. Also, this is speaking to information. And this iterates, but the longer you go in your match, the more information you'll have. This is more for tournament when you only have a first to 2. You want it to go a long time in order to build that resource, that information resource you have on the other person. And there are styles that are better at generating information. Swarming can generate information, but most of the time they're just blocking. But you learn what their blocking habits are. Like, that's generating information. If you are standing back and doing backdash runaway, maybe you might generate some information, but for the most part, you're just watching them move. And so these people who are testing the waters early on in the match are trying to build that information resource. But usually they do it with footsie. Footsie is a better tool for information. All right, focus. This is another fun Cartesian plot. On the y-axis we have life bar commitment. That's how risky it is, and then the amount of focus that it takes in order for you to maintain that style. Because the more focus you put in to your style, the less focus you'll have trying to recognize patterns in your opponent. So early on in a match, you want to use less focus on your style, like backdash runaway, so that you can see what it is they're doing. You're not giving them a stimulus to respond to. That's why you've got check and footsie as using less focus, but it'll generate some information. Focus is mental resource. Less life bar commitment means longer matches. You're taking less damage. Longer matches mean more reproducible results. Remember, tournaments are a matter of skill, sure. But what makes a really great player is their consistency, not their ability to win. I'll repeat that. There are some players out there who can beat anyone on Earth, but they can do it only rarely. That doesn't make them very good. That doesn't mean they'll go very far in tournaments. What makes a good tournament player is their ability to win after win after win after win after win after win. And there's a lot that goes into that. other resources like your own health that play a role. Your ability to get warm, to cool down. But all of those are resources. Let's see. Punching up and punching down. Chaos is punching up. What do I mean by that? If you're fighting somebody stronger than you, and you'll feel it, you'll run up against it. I don't care how good you are, you'll run up against it at some point. Arslan Ash, I don't care. Knee, yeah, he used to get his butt kicked when he was not as good as he is now. Sunship used to whomp him. And even Knee, sometimes you run up against somebody who's just better than you on that day. And when you do, are you going to lose? No, you're going to still fight. But how are you going to fight? You're going to punch up. And what does punching up mean? It means you're going to throw out big damage. And and sometimes that's going to mean a larger risk because you've got to establish something different than your opponent. The opponent, if they're stronger than you, is going to want a match to last longer because more rolls of the dice, the more likely the result will meet an expected value. If you're worse than the other guy, you want the match to be short. You want to do a lot of damage and in some sort of nutty ways. You want to brawl. You want the casino. And maybe the casino gods are just on your side that day. Maybe they are the better player. But you know what? An Anna wall standing 2 versus an Anna sweep, you hit that wrong enough times, if just that coin flip happens to not go your way, even though you are a better player, you lose. That's it. You just lose. So maybe you got to punch up sometimes. And then control. Maybe you are the better player. Maybe you've got better neutral, you've got better juggles, you've got better composure, and you just need to win. You're the favorite. You don't want the underdog to come back and beat you. There are a lot of people who don't root for underdogs because it violates the expected order of things. You just punch down. You just hit them. Hit them like they're a kid. Ah! No, don't hit them like a kid. You don't hit kids. But you just walk up and you kill them. And you do it in a very slow and methodical way that proves to them without a shadow of a doubt that they never had a chance. And you kill them. You don't just kill them, you beat them. You don't just win, you beat them. Those are two different things. That somebody who's trying to punch up is trying to win. Somebody who is better and is trying to control a match is trying to beat them. It's a matter of dominance at that point. It's not a matter of luck or chance or just how things pan out that day. A person trying to punch up is trying to make it that way. A person trying to punch down is not. All right. This is focus. All right. Focus is a limited resource. At some point you run out. So there are styles that use more focus, and on the Cartesian plot I have here, it's damage potential versus attrition is what depletes focus in your opponent the most. And you can go back and look at these graphs later. But you can see that in this plot where we have the most damage potential and most attrition, we get things like rhythm baiting or rhythm stalking, Abare. It's frustrating to get hit by an Abare player. It's like, that worked. You're just mashing, and you're losing focus while you're being frustrated by it. A very good player understands what's going on and isn't frustrated by it, but it's frustrating. I don't care who you. There's this famous match. I think it's Evo 2010. It's Rip versus Jimmy J. It's close to the finals. I think it's for third or something. And there's this famous photo of Jimmy Tran just going like, and Rip going after he hit a down 2-3, and you can see in in Jimmy's posture, and just his face, it did psychic damage. It was frustrating, and he lost focus because of it. It was damaging. It did damage, not just to the life bar, to the focus. Uh, all right, and then there's information spending. That is you know, utilizing that information resource in order to generate damage. Grapplers do the same thing. They have to condition you into a certain behavior. And then there is exhausting. So these are people who just whittle you down. It is grueling. People who play keep out or sabaki is they're not going to do a bunch of damage in one particular time, but over the course of many rounds and long sets, and this is more of the type of player that I am, uh, it's going to just feel bad. You'll get to the end of the first to 10 and you're going to be tired. Like you're going to need a glass of water. My goal is usually when I play, I'm a long set player. I'm not as good in the first to 2 as I am in a first to 10, and I know that about myself. Um, and maybe you can apply your styles differently where your strengths are to be good in the first to 2, but that's just how I evolved over time. But I my goal is to have it be a grueling game because one of my strengths is my stamina. Um, let's see, and then low amounts of attrition and low amounts of damage potential. That is how you build your information resource. Playing footsie or runaway check is that you're not really putting yourself out there, which is increasing the clock, which is how you gather information. You're not spending your clock resource. All right. Any questions so far? Not yet? Or did I lose you?
No, I'm still here. So sorry. I was navigating YouTube.
No.
No questions, I believe. At this moment, we just
Okay, good,
have
good, good, good.
comments. Luke's
Okay.
Leaf, who asked the question previously about the life lead and resources, they stated the slide answers, or when you transition to the next slides, that answered the question
Oh,
or
good.
where you were getting at. So they say thank you for the answer.
Good.
And we had some comments from Bacardi Poppy. He discusses kind of, he was commenting on how your style kind of changes in the match, where he says, you need to be fluid depending on how the match is going. You, of course, will have your style, but it should change depending on how the particular match is going. Think about
Yeah.
it as a conversation, he says. And then I mentioned you were kind of like getting to it. Have you made it to the resource slide yet, or
Uh, which resource?
the resource on information? I think.
Uh, yeah, I'm in information now.
Oh, okay, great. Then we're right on the mark then. Yeah, I think we're good to go with all questions then.
All right, excellent. All right, the information cycle. So this is you gathering your information and then spending that information in order to generate damage. So the information cycle: deplete their focus, puts the opponent in autopilot. Once their focus is down, then all of their autonomic behaviors come back. This is how you play when you're at your worst. It's lots of habits come out when you're just on autopilot, and that'll happen if it's a grueling match. And then you gather that info. You gather the info on their habits, and then you maintain your own focus in order to not give away your own habits, and also to save that information for a moment when you need when it will generate the highest amount of value. Remember, I said that your life, the life bar, has the life has more value the less you have of it. So if you pick out a habit that will only generate 15 damage, don't don't laugh at that. Like 15 damage is not a lot when the life bars are full. But 15 damage kills when they're low on life. That has a lot of value. So you use the information that you have by reading their habits, which you revealed by depleting their focus. you use that information when it will generate you the greatest amount of value, which is when they're low on life. That's when you need that round. That's when you're 2-2. There are a lot of players out here. This will be a phenomenon that you'll encounter in your life. You will play someone in something like a first to 10, and you'll feel like you're even with them. But for some reason, you'll be 2-2 on rounds, and they'll always get the third round. And then it'll end up being 10-2 or 10-3, 10-0. And you'll say, how is that possible? I won roughly about the same number of rounds that they did. And if this is truly stochastic, maybe 10-1 didn't reflect the true strengths between the two players. Well, the reason why is because they're using information that they gathered on you quite effectively, more effectively than you, because they're winning that fifth round when it matters. They're saving their information longer than you. That's how that comes about. All right. Positional resource. Okay, this is a different brand. We're now switching gears. We're getting away from mental resource, and then we're now looking at positional resource. This is in the game. This is something that you're aware of, but this is not physical to yourself. This is just in game. This is your character. Optimal position. Optimal position is character and style dependent. I've got a plot of it early on in the presentation. With superior movement, maintain optimal position. Makes sense to me. If your movement's better than the other guy, then you can dictate the range at which you fight. Consider spending life bar as a resource in order to obtain optimal position. If you're a swarmer, you might have to take a few hits in order to get into range 0. If you're a turtle, a backdash turtle, sometimes you take a few hits in order to get the position that you want. Sometimes you have to let the swarmer hit you. Maybe not on purpose, because they're just gonna. Or maybe you do. Maybe you sacrifice a little bit of health in order to get a better range. Maybe you do that cognitively. That might make sense. Bullies, which I have 2 S's in for some reason. Grapplers, steppers, and wall turtles are the most important positional styles. Your position matters when you're a bully, or a reverse bully. There better be a wall nearby if you intend to bully. Grapplers, same thing. You don't want somebody backdashing on you. There better be a consequence to ducking. Steppers, if a wall is on there, if there is a side that they prefer to step, or if you force crouching, they can only step in a particular direction and the wall happens to be in that direction, that's an advantage. They can't step you. If you force crouching, and the only thing you can do is sidestep up, you can't sidestep down. And if the wall's there, you're not going anywhere. You can't sidestep. So that's one option off the table. You're statistically stronger because you've removed an option from them. And then wall turtles, you better. That's a positional style. All right, optimal wall position. Where should you be on a stage in order to receive the least amount of damage? There's this green spot that these green spots that I have marked out for you. I'm just showing you a rectangle. But in these green spots, juggle damage is minimized for a lot of characters. Characters like Changs or Lars, they've got tremendous wall carry ability. They can get you across the stage. Grand. But if you don't give them that, if you maybe don't want to bully them so that they turn around and then launch your takas all the way across to the other wall and then do 95 damage to you, 100 damage to you. Maybe you fight relatively close to a wall. Maybe not with your back to the wall, but close. Close enough so that they can't splat you, but if they do launch you, they're not doing 100 damage. They're doing 60 damage. Lars has a really hard time front loading his damage. Chang's do too. So maybe that's where you want to fight. Throwing that out there. And then this green spot I have in the middle is if there's enough space so that they can't get you to the wall. In Tekken 8, this would be the center of the stage, and maybe there are some characters that don't have very good wall carries, but pretty much everyone now has the ability to take you pretty far. But have that in mind. Where's your optimal stage position? And think of it as a resource. Optimal wall position. If your forward pressure is less than that of your opponent, for example, if they're a bully, and you're not as good of a wall turtle, meaning there are wall turtles, people who are good with their back against the wall, you're going to want to stay in the center of the arena. And then you're going to want to sidestep in the direction that creates more space behind you. And you can also create space with juggles, by launching them and taking them far, and doing it with knockdowns. And you can also spend life bar and focus in order to generate more space. If you've got a bad habit that they have, and maybe you can get a knockdown, maybe you don't use it in order to kill. Maybe you use it to get a better position so that you don't die. Perfectly reasonable to do that. What do I mean by forward pressure? Forward pressure is how well you're forcing the opponent's back to the wall, or if, like, both fighters have a certain amount of forward pressure. Some people's forward pressure is very strong. Some people's forward pressure is not that strong. They're more lateral as they move to the side. Or maybe indeed they want to backdash. Maybe they're a backdash turtle. Maybe they don't have any sort of intention of applying forward pressure. Forward pressure is more of a goal for the developers of this game. But if your forward pressure is fine, you don't need to worry about this particular slide. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Don't worry about it. Optimal line. All right. So again, line is that arrow that's drawn between you and them. Many characters have Oki opportunities at being just off perpendicular. I removed that. Sorry, this is a typo. That's true for Tekken 7. It's not true for 8. They removed it. Minimize juggle damage through side wall splats. You know how that side wall splat saves lives? It's true. And you can use that to your advantage by making sure that your line is catty-corner to a wall, not perpendicular to a wall. If you're catty-corner to a wall, and Tekken 8 resolves a lot of that, but you're not going to take as much damage. You're just not. Make sure your back is not at a breakable wall. That's kind of important, because you're going to take a lot of damage if they manage to tag you. Understand how throws and throw breaks change your line. So you can change your line through superior movement. Dances typically do a good job of that. And throws, specifically throw breaks. And throws themselves too. So if you throw an opponent, that is a 11 frame, 12 frame, 14 frame high, unblockable, which alters your line. That's something relatively low risk, which happens to do a good job of drastically altering your line without doing something like sidestepping, where you're not blocking during the entirety of that. So instead of sidestepping for 14 frames, which isn't going to take you very far, you throw for 14 frames, same vulnerability, but a much bigger worth in as far as the ability to change your line. If you are decent at being a, wall turtle, meaning having your back at the wall, there's nothing wrong with with having your back at the roll. Stay there. Like, don't worry about it. You've already factored that in. That's your style. All right. Preventing comeback mechanics. This is momentum. Scenarios to keep them out of rage. Your opponent has a 50-50 rage drive launcher. This is more geared towards Tekken 7 if you can't tell. Life lead is tenuous. Or you're fighting a momentum-based character. Some characters just steamroll once they get going. Waste time. Even if there's plenty of time on the clock, just waste it. You want them to run out of steam. It's a resource. The good thing about momentum is that it doesn't last forever. It can't. Otherwise, they'd be too strong all the time. It is going to end. And so just waste as much time as you can. Keep out, run away, wall. Do not check swarmers who counter hit stock. Meaning that if you've got a swarmer with a ton of momentum, a lot of swarmers pair their style with counter hit frame traps. Like Farang does this. So you feel the pressure, and you feel like you want to push a button under the weight of all that momentum. Don't check. don't check jab or check mid. You're going to eat a counter hit. So what do? Just keep blocking. Or you find the right opportunity to step, but you do not push a button. If you fail to close, remember, sometimes it just statistically happens, especially against brawlers. Sometimes the comeback mechanic happens. It's just a matter of the statistics. So you get those people who spam hop kick or spam some sort of launcher, and you're like, God, but I was winning. And I was ahead in the life bar. And that's true, you were, but statistically, they do their damage in chunks. In order for the statistic to be what it is, they have to come from behind. If you fight by taking little bits of life away from them more consistently, you're going to get a life lead. That's just the nature of it. That's just the math. It's not that you were winning. You don't have to take it personally that they came from behind. Like, that's just the math. Yeah. But what is that from? Price is Right?
I don't know. I didn't do it.
Uh,
These sound
but
most people get into are funny.
yeah,
Please let's not spam soundboard.
Great
that
timing.
lead-
Great timing.
that does lead me to my next point. Don't lose focus because of it. If you get frustrated by a comeback mechanic, you can talk to yourself and tell you it's just statistics, and then don't let that ruin your focus, which is a resource. All right, using your heat. This is updated. This is updated for Tekken 8. So try to take this with a grain of salt. I haven't spent years with Tekken 8, so this is hypothetical. All right. The most amount of value comes from the kill. That's the best spot to put 20 extra damage, is killing the other guy. Heat can add 20 damage to a combo. If the kill is there, kill them. If you've launched them, don't worry about finding the right spot to use your heat. Just kill them. Finish your food. If they have used their heat already, they can't regenerate. And that's an important point. If you're finding somebody who uses heat very early in the round and the life bar hasn't depleted, and if you have a safe approach to swarm, maybe you chip swarm them because they're not generating any of that. They're not getting that life back. So things like floats and chip damage that do 100% recoverable damage, it's more advantageous for you to use those tactics when they've already burned their heat. do not die with heat. Even if you do nothing other than using a heat burst into a heat smash, just like basically mashing 2+3, it's more value on the table. It uh it you don't want to leave anything on the table, any resource unused, especially one that regenerates every round. So if if you've got nothing better to do, if you're on death's door, don't die with heat. And also, do not kill with heat. If you are winning without using your heat meter, you are doing it suboptimally. And why is that such a big deal? Like, you're getting the W. Why do you care if I win with heat or not? Because winning is not the most important thing. I will say that again. Winning is not the most important thing. In fact, winning doesn't add a lot of value to your life.
What's the most important thing, Doc?
Cultivation. You are cultivating yourself. And one way to cultivate yourself, that's to this particular point, is to use heat. If you killed them and you didn't use heat, you still have work to do to cultivate yourself to be more optimal. It's just a way to improve. Because you are the same person you are if you're fighting a player that's not as good or that doesn't have as much chance as winning. I don't want to use the word good or bad because that can color things. If you're fighting a player that has less chance of winning, you want to fight in a way, maybe you don't want to reveal information, but you want to fight in a way that cultivates yourself. Even if the skill level is, even if there's a large mismatch. And that's one particular point. Use your heat bar, even if you're going to win. If you're not about to die, find the value. Get your meter's worth. I was noticing a player in our scene who would, anytime that they got into heat, they would immediately use their heat smash. Just immediately. And it had some level of success, and it was one of those 10 frame high heat smashes that just, and they got frame advantage out of it, and it's just a matter of keeping it up. But did they find the value? Was there a way to generate more damage off of that heat bar for the same amount of risk? And I would tell you that there probably is. If you have heat meter left, it is hard for me to imagine a scenario where burning it uh, generated more value, assuming that you make decisions with the same likelihood of success. It's hard for me to imagine it. Yeah. It's use whatever burns your bar. Like for example, one of those heat dashes. Use it at the end of your bar in order to finally deplete it, and also practice ways of when you're low on bar, how can you quickly dump it into one of these heat dashes or smashes or just anything that burns your bar. Recovering life only adds more time. I want you to think of it this way: life is a resource. It's true, and there are going to be situations where you have recoverable life, but the only time that life recovery mattered, as far as you getting the dub or not, is if you managed to kill the other guy while your remaining life is the life that you regenerated. That's the only time it mattered. And I'm going to say that the total percentage of matches that this occurs is probably small, probably less than 10%. And I can imagine more matches being ended by using their heat in a juggle or a whiff punish or something along those lines. I imagine the percentage of matches or rounds that are ended that way is much higher. So maybe you do have a lot of life to recover. Maybe you're entering in a neutral situation, but this game is very chunky with the damage, and if you are solely using your heat in order to regenerate your life, it makes you predictable. It means you're about to swarm. That's what it means. And you can stop that. You're giving them information. If it's obvious you're using your heat to generate life, you have given them a resource that they can use to kill you. Unless you're planning to play some deep Yomi on them. And Yomi, there is Yomi. Yomi does exist. It's not neutral. Um, it, sort of. But I do happen to feel this particular way about using heat solely for life regen. Where's the best place to use heat for you? So this is a graph. This is the same graph that we had before for life bar as a resource. Where on this plot, and again, the arrow of time from the beginning of the match to the end of the match is going from the upper right hand side of your screen to the lower left hand side of your screen. That's just how the arrow of time is flowing. You don't want to use your heat too early, because then you're susceptible to things like chip swarming. And you don't want to use your heat too late, because then you're possibly not getting the value from your heat. So I would suspect that for your style, for most styles, that the optimal place to put your heat is in the middle. But maybe that's not true. Maybe you use chip swarming in your game. Maybe you're a great chip swarmer. Huang, Lily. Maybe they've already used heat very early in the match. Then it's okay for you to use heat. If you have a wall combo that you're only going to get that wall if you burn heat, do it. That's now that differential jumps from being 20 extra damage to being 60 to 40 extra damage or 60 extra damage. Use it. If that's the difference between getting a stage mechanic or not. If you are if your opponent is stronger, you're going to want to use heat early. And let me explain the rationale. If your opponent is stronger, then the matches are supposed to be shorter. Remember punching up? Punching up means you want the rounds to be short. And if you want the rounds to be short, you're going to need all the help you can get. Use your heat. If you are stronger, save your heat. You want the matches to be as long as possible. That is how you statistically get your advantage or realize your advantage. It is by having more expected values over time, more rolls of the dice. If you stalk or brawl, and you're going to want to use it late. Find the moment that kills. If they use aerial moves, use it later. Like for example, Xiao Yu using wall running 3 or Huarong using wall running 3, or characters that have a fly stance. Like save it. Having a heat do bind, a bound, is advantageous. You can get damage that way. That's a good 50 damage. All right, so I want to just show you something. This is the same plot that I had earlier. It's really more for Tekken 7. I'll show you what Tekken 8 did. All right, in the next slide. All right. So here I have these dotted lines. And those dotted lines are the one juggle will kill you line. That is the point at which you need to rapidly reduce your risk. Because it could kill you. And then you lose all your value. So your styles change drastically once you cross that dotted line. You have to be much more conservative. And what Tekken 8 did was this. It moved the line. Because now, with heat, any juggle can do 85 damage. Min. Like there are some people on open ground. If you get hit by a JFSR, you're eating 100 against somebody who knows what they're doing. So it increased it decreased the early match stage. You almost are instantaneously in the late match in Tekken 8. It's like the early match is only a few seconds long. Mm. All right. Do we have questions?
I don't think we have any questions at this moment. We did have a fun comment from V that says, "We don't need to go into David Serlin and his ideology of Yomi, do we?"
Serlin is a smart guy. Like we could go into Serlin. He's another doctor. People don't know that. All right. Let's see. Let's continue on. We're almost. We're pretty close to the end here. Actually, we got a bit. The clock is your friend. All right. The more time spent is more reproducibility. Style counters become more effective when you're short on time. And why is that the case? When you're short on time, you need to generate damage, which means you need to come in and you need to enact the plan. You can't stall anymore. So the counters become more apparent. Their pathways to victory become fewer and fewer. And if you reduce the number of pathways that they have to victory, then you have a good idea on which one of those pathways they're going to be on. If the round is a complete victory, do not kill them quickly. This is sort of counterintuitive to the finish your food mentality of the FGC. Use that time to rebuild your focus, demoralize them, do damage, hurt them, have fun. Some people play better when they're having fun, and you can use the clock to do that if you're definitely going to win. Or you just walk up and kill them. And then lastly, X Factor. X Factor, some people just have the special sauce. Some people do. I don't know what to tell you. Some people are just built different. If they have special conditions that they need to activate in order to get that special sauce, avoid it like the plague. There are some people who need money on the line in order to play well. They've existed. Brian H. is one of them. Brian H. used to go around challenging people to money matches, in part because he was freaking great at them, but also because that's the only way he could play seriously. It was actually a handicap. There are some people who get harder to beat the less they have in life. Some people just, when they're low on life, like, and you have a lead on them, they're just really hard to kill. And you think, how can you get around that? And the idea is to never get too big of a lead. We have a player in our community, Still Electric, who happens to be this type of player, is that his special ability activates when he needs to come from behind to win. it it just happens. That's his special sauce. Some people are harder to beat when they trash talk. Poke Chop, famous example. They're stronger when they troll. Plenty of players. Or there are some players that need to be insulted to play well. If you're disrespectful to them. Prima donnas have this trait. It's just that's who they are. I won't name names or anything. But if they're a prima donna, I bet don't go around insulting them. Be respectful, kind, polite, deferential. Because if you're not, they're going to destroy you. X Factor's a finicky thing. This is not a set science. And sometimes it's just their day. The example I have of this is the realist, who's in Texas. On his best day, I know for a fact he could beat anyone on Earth. I knew it. I saw it. He was that good on his best day. Now, on an average day, he was just good. But on his best day, he could beat anyone. And remember, tournaments are about consistency. Fight when the conditions are right. This is a if you've got the conditions that activate your X factor or whatever makes you the best player that you can be, fight when you've got them. They're not always going to be there for you, so find a way. If you can figure out a way to have that be tournament day, grand. If you can have that to be a local, grand. Uh, and the flip side of this coin is do not fight when the conditions are unfavorable. Are unfavorable. Maybe, and this is just throwing it out there, guys, and women. I don't mean to be sexist about that. People, uh, if it's a bad day, don't fight. There is, and this is more of a scene level discussion, it's okay to lose. It is okay to lose. There is a consequence. Uh, there is social standing. And for the longest period of time, um, your standing in a community is a meritocracy. And if they like you, sure. But a lot of what goes on in the FGC goes up or down with how much you win or how strong you're perceived to be. So maybe you don't fight on a bad day. Maybe you limit that amount of exposure. Maybe your goal, if you're somebody like me, to be vain, to be beautiful and wonderful. Maybe on a day that you're feeling not so beautiful, maybe you don't fight. Maybe you don't go outside. Maybe you don't do any of that. Maybe you rest. Maybe you take a shower. Maybe you cultivate yourself in another way. This is good advice for life in general. Uh, don't put your worst self out there. Put your best self out there. And if it's a day where you're not your best self, maybe you don't put yourself out there. All right.
We have some questions for you.
All right.
So we have two questions in regarding X Factor. The first one is regarding Blitz Jumanji. He was bringing this up, I believe, in reference to your mentioning of the realist. He says, "How do you notice potential like this in someone, even when you beat someone effortlessly? Almost, I've had some great players say, I see the potential in that player. They are good. They may say, and it's not something I can comprehend. How someone sees overall potential of a Tekken player. Perfect comparison. How you mentioned the realist."
How do you see it? How do you see potential? And specifically in the realist. Now, the realist is older than you, Jumanji. Is that he goes further back, so he's on a different stage of life than you are. So that doesn't exactly apply in the way from you to him. Um, but I'll answer each separately, the two questions, because there's really two questions in there. One, how do you recognize the potential in a player? And two, maybe the question is, how did I recognize the potential in the realist specifically? I'll do both. Um, or I hopefully that shouldn't be construed as, why do you think realist is so good? He's not that good anyway, because that's another way to construe that question. But I'm assuming that that's not the way it should be construed. Uh, how do you recognize the potential in somebody? Like, what is their X factor? Oftentimes there will be lore about this particular player.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, yes.
lore is can be accurate, and yes, there's observer bias, confirmation bias, but it's not always wrong. it, you get a very good sense of a person playing them a lot, getting a feel for them. The best way, um, and the most advantageous way, if you're trying to take somebody down, is to play them before the tournament in casual sets. That's the best way to identify their X factor. Before a tournament in casual sets, you've got your best shot, um, because you're not worried about the X factors you know in your own scene. You're worried about the X factors of the people you're going to be facing in tournament. Uh, and you don't want to be finding out about it come tournament day. You want to be finding out about it the night before. So that's a two-sided sword. That's a two-edged blade because they could find out what yours is too. Um, so if you watch from afar, that's perhaps your best time to do it. But recognizing the potential in a younger player, um, that's tough for me to answer. I've 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 been a part of 6 different scenes. I've had 6 crews. Uh, I've had close close to 100 crewmates in 25 years of playing, and I can tell you that I thought most of them were special, if not all of them. They had something. I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you a story. Kalun Lao Chan. Kalun Lao Chan is a guy I knew in Syracuse. Could he win tournaments? Hell no. Was his neutral good? No. He was. He couldn't win. Just the way that he wanted to play, he couldn't win. He played Steve. He was absolutely obsessed with Snake Charmer. That's the swayback too. Obsessed. And I remember this clearly, that he just wanted to hit that move. That was it. If he did it, he won. In his mind. That's what kept him going. That was his win condition. And you can have win conditions that have nothing to do with whether or not you take a round or win a first to two. His win condition was landing Snake Charmer. And I'll never forget, Bronson Tran was visiting upstate New York, and Kalun Lao Chan hit Snake Charmer, and immediately Bronson knew what had happened. Bronson knew he had lost because the win condition was his. Recognizing something special is is how you look at yourself. It's a state of mind. Uh, Famous is a state of mind. It's not how many people know you. It's how you behave. Uh, Winning and being special is a frame of mind. You're special if you act like it. Hopefully that answers it.
Very touching. I think that summed up a lot of points. Thank you, Doc. We have another one for you. This one comes from Roman TK17. He says, for someone who considers trash talk as an X factor, could using trash talk back to that player be a good counter? He continues and says, it doesn't have to be trash
Yes.
talk specifically. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, trash talking is a skill. It is a skill. You can develop it. I happen to be good at trash talking. I've known some people who were great trash talkers and who could trash talk while they were playing. And there, for diffusing that, you can be brutally funny. If you're brutally funny back to them, it diffuses their trash talk. If they're making the what is it, some sort of face of smiling acknowledgement, like that was a good one, uh, then yeah, they'll shit talk you, but it's predatory. Like, do they smell blood in the water? And if they don't smell blood in the water, then their X factor's not going to be there. Mental defense, psychic defense is real in the FGC, especially during the arcade days. During the arcade days, you needed to have what they would call a thick skin, but it's the ability to protect your focus, and you can do that a number of ways. And that's that's a tool for life. It, you might think shit talking is relatively niche to the FGC. There's going to be times when your focus is tested a lot. There are going to be times when somebody is not happy with you, especially as you grow to be my age. Um, you're going to have bosses who are not happy with you. You're going to have spouses that are not happy with you, children that are not happy with you. And you do not have the luxury of losing your composure. You don't. The consequences are too great. And so it is a life skill that I learned in the arcades, to be able to withstand trash talk, and sometimes by shutting up in my own life, but sometimes by being brutally funny back at them. Any other questions?
Let's see. We kind of have one more. We have two questions. They kind of expanded upon their initial question and said it doesn't have to be trash talk specifically, but if it's a reproducible X factor, can you use that same X factor to mess with the person / counter them?
Don't activate their X factor. Keep them from activating their X factor. The thing, don't test it. I'm very much a fan of attacking a person's strengths. I get that. I'm highly sympathetic. X Factor is a different thing. X Factor is that thing that makes them special. Don't test it. You can attack a strength. Attacking the unique snowflake that they are. I don't know if I can advise that. I don't think I can get behind that. Like, for example, I happen to be very good at Oki. I think somebody letting me launch them in order to be put to play the Oki game, I don't think that's advantageous for them. I just don't see how. If they wanted to flip the coin, maybe they're very good at guessing, but no, I avoid it.
And last question we have from Wasulu98. He says, I like to talk shit after I win the set. What do you do if your shit talking backfires during the set?
What do you do if your shit talking backfires during the set? Or maybe you lose, maybe you shit talk and you lost. Grace. Certainly, I've had my fair share of moments where I shit talked and I've lost. I've played around and I've lost. That's life. Sometimes you're an asshole and sometimes it comes back. Play the villain. Play it. You beat me, and you can play that role successfully, and you can be a villain with grace too.
No, I mean that's weak. You talk mess when you're both 0-0 before the match. That's weak.
No, do not be weak. Keep your shit talking up.
Yeah,
Grace.
everybody
Grace
want to talk when they up. Nah, you talk when you're about to start the match. None of that weak stuff. You beat them and then you get up and leave.
Oh, you beat them and you get up and leave. So shit
It's just like
talking
they
after
they
the match.
started and they switch up during that, and after they get done, it's just like they turn to a whole complete person.
Yeah, that happens. And what do you do in that case? Do you shake their hand or do you shit talk back at them? That's your call. But let's look at the consequences. If you shake their hand, maybe you make a friend. Maybe that's a friend you want to have. Maybe that's a friend you don't want to have. Maybe you do want to shit talk them. Uh, I would say that be mindful of the consequence and not chase the short-term euphoria of shoving it down their throat or anything. If you're mindful of consequences, that's the definition of adulthood. Yeah, that would be something I would say. It would really need to depend on the person, I would say. Like some people have it coming. Some people all shit talk, but um, if it's somebody who is shit talking for the fun of it, then I'm going to have fun shit talking. If it's somebody who is really acerbic in their soul, um, maybe I just let them on their way. Maybe I don't need their acridity in my life. Um, and I wish them well, and I shake their hand, and then they're gone. It depends on the person.
That's all that we have for questions right now. Last
Right?
comment said, "Read the damn room."
Yeah, this is not my personal strength. Is reading the room. I'll play heel. I've I've like I'm an over the top face uh, that tends towards heel. That's what my vanity leans towards the most, and with my particular style of language, lexicon, vocabulary, uh, uh, it leads people to have fun hating me. And I want them to have fun. I want to put on a show. Um, so that just fits me. Now, if somebody's more of an underdog, if their own personal story and their own personal habits just that's where they fit, they're an underdog, then turn face, be a face. Uh, There's a lot of overlap between this is that everything is everything else. Professional wrestling, a lot of overlap between professional wrestling and the FGC. And this is one aspect of it. All right, synergies. This is we're wrapping up the presentation. Uh, what styles work well with each other? So you remember that three pronged that this three pronged diagram where you've got one prong, uh, another prong, and another prong. Styles, the synergies that exist are where you have three styles that complement one another on this plot that exist in different ranges and different levels of initiative. So, for example, one style will feed another. And I've kind of done the legwork for you here, where I show you the different styles. Like, for example, a swarmer is going to have a lot of synergy with sidestep stalking, rhythm stalking, and runaway, um, where um, where you're on different sides of this branch, and there's a reason why, in terms of initiative, that these feed one another, um, and I can go into each one, but this is what I've personally found, um, and I'll give you an example. Like let's work with the first one. Swarmer uh, might pair well with a sidestep stalker because you're going to hit a point when you're more neutral. You're already in range zero. Range zero is where sidestep stalking occurs. It's also where swarming occurs. So if you're swarming, and then commit to a sidestep and then twitch react launch, that's a synergy. Um, counter hit stalking or frame traps would be another. Rhythm stalking. So you're swarming. You have the initiative, and then you wait a beat, and then they push a button, and you hurt them. That's a synergy between swarming and rhythm. And then runaway would be you're swarming, and they're constantly on the defensive, and then you go and switch to something like runaway or keep out, and then they're like, aha, my chance is here. I've been on the defensive this whole time. Time to run in, and that's exactly what a keep out turtle or a runaway turtle is going to want you to do. Uh, Casino, or let's see, what are some other examples? Grappler and bully. You can't backdash if your back is against the wall. That feeds very well into um, a grappler's offense. What would be some other things? Brawler fits well with a barre. You're constantly looking for the initiative, and you hit hard. You're at that -6, -3, -3, -4, -5. Maybe you hit the Abare when you're brawling. evasion. Let's see. It gets a little bit wonky though in this version of PowerPoint. Keep out, counter hit, Sabaki, runaway. So keep out and runaway mix. I mean, they're almost the same style of turtle. That makes a lot of sense to me. Keep out and Sabaki. If they're coming in, you can hit a power crush and hurt them back. This is the principle behind the backlash Huarong turtle, is that you're keeping them out and then they run into a backlash. Well, they're throwing out moves to try to close the gap, and they'll hit the guard of a backlash. Counter hit stalking, same thing. Is that if you've got a fast counter hit, doesn't matter what level it is, low, mid, or high. If they're running in, the time that it takes for them to close the gap is the same amount of time you react to keeping them out. And if you've got 11 frames, they're not beating you to the punch on a counter hit stock. They have to do some sort of zone stalking. But I do the legwork for you here. These are my thoughts, and if you've got other pairings that fit with your character, and I admit wholeheartedly this could be character dependent, depending on the special mechanisms, you might find pairings that maybe share a range, maybe have complementary ranges, that maybe share an initiative. I wouldn't say share an initiative because maybe they share an initiative. But you'll have ways in which they complement each other, meaning that they occupy different levels in space and time, or that they occupy the same space and the same range and maybe different initiatives, or the same initiative and maybe different ranges. You'll find your own pairings, and I offer you to explore them. Some full archetypes, and what I use archetype here to mean a combination of styles, a combination of these elements of grammar that I'm presenting to you. So, for example, a full circuit, brawler, rhythm, check, abare. So these are just the synergies that exist. I'm just going through this list and finding rings and circuits. Grappler, counter hit stalker, wall turtle, footsie, sidestep, runaway, whiff, runaway, casino, and you can pair these three things. These exist on the three sides of the prong. But there are plenty more, and player dependent, character dependent. Counters. I do have justifications for all of these. I can go into it, but we're here at 10:30 in the evening. I've been talking for 2 hours straight, and you're probably tired of me already. But to give you an example of what might be a good counter, I've encountered, for example, keep out. A keep out turtle would be bad against a whiff stalker, because a whiff stalker, a keep out, in order to have the initiative over somebody coming in, has to press the button before they've entered the zone of influence. And a whiff stalker doesn't enter the zone of influence. He stays just outside of the zone of influence. And so a keep out turtle is susceptible to that. Somebody who's slower, like a brawler, is going to have a hard time against maybe a swarmer. Let's see, do I have or a footsie? A brawler is good against footsie because they put out more damage. A brawler is bad against somebody like a keep out, that they're slow on the uptake anyway. And a keep out.
I'm sorry. When you're pointing out the different ones you're mentioning, could you point out with your cursor which one you're talking about so we can follow the lines?
Sure. Brawler. Brawler might be good against footsie because a brawler puts out more damage.
Perfect.
And might be weak against somebody who's a Sabaki counter or keep out. Keep out, for example, brawlers use moves that are slower, that have damage, they have the damage because they are slower. But a keep out person, a keep out player is just faster in terms of initiative. and so the brawler's just never going to be able to output damage. Somebody who's looking for counter hits, like counter hit highs or something fast, or somebody using Sabaki, where Sabaki activates at 9. So brawlers are susceptible against styles that have faster initiative. Grapplers might have a hard time against evasion, for example. Like King historically has had a hard time against Xiao Yu because of AOP. This is known. You can't throw AOP. You can't throw. You can't throw Tarantula. Tarantula? Yeah, Tarantula. If you can't get close to them, you can't throw them. So keep out is a good tool against that. Casino. Casino's bad against Swarmer. To set up your 50-50, you're not going to generate, you're not going to force them to roll the dice.
I'm so sorry, Doc. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I joined on my phone and I lost the stream. 1 second. Let me get back in there. That was so scary. Let me see here. Mic check 1 2. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then let's get back in the Discord. Okay, we are
Damn it,
live.
Trojan.
I know, I was so surprised. I'm like trying to look for the chat. And, okay, we're good to go now.
Okay. All right. We're back on stream as well.
Yes, we're all good to go. Thank you.
All right. Some other examples, and I'll do one more example of something like what's it would be a whiff stalker. A whiff stalker is not going to be good against a swarmer, just because a whiff stalker wants to exist at range 3 and a swarmer wants to exist at range 0. And usually swarmers are given tools in order to close the gap. Or bullies. Bullies where they have a lot of forward pressure. Whiff stalkers are just going to run out of space and they're going to put their back to the wall. That's what's going to happen. So you feel free to peruse this list too, and make your own conclusions as far as what these styles are good against and what they're not good against. This is an element of grammar. You can write a different book than the book than the writings as I see it. Don't feel beholden to it. Circuits. This is how I generally operate in a match. Is that there are no hard and set rules. Note who counters you and why. I will see people who whiff stock, and I say, "Oh, I see what you're doing," and I know in my head that there's a counter to it. You want to exist at range 3. Okay, I'm not going to let you exist at range 3. You're going to have to find a different style. So there's going to be a circuit where you're responding to them and they're responding to you and you're responding to their response and they're responding to your response of their response, and back and forth and back and forth. But you have to have a closed loop of it at some point. You can't go too far down the rabbit hole. And if you limit yourself to maybe 3 or 4 moves per style, and then you've got complementary styles in sets of 3, that's maybe 12 moves total. 12 moves total, and then you've got 2 modes. It's hard to have 4 modes. I know plenty of people with 2. I know some people with 3. But you want to have a plan. Like, what are you good at? What's your early match when you enter a set? And then as you get later in the set, what's your plan? If you're where you are in your life bar versus their life bar chart. And you have an archetype, a pairing of styles that is more advantageous at an end of a match, and there are pairings of styles that are more advantageous at the beginning of a match, or if you're fighting somebody stronger than you or weaker than you. Remember I said about punching up. Punching up is more of a brawling style or casino, while punching down would be more footsie. You're going to want to be more neutral if you believe you're stronger, and Maybe you want to gather information. That's also footsie. And that's in the beginning of a match. Maybe you don't want to gather information at the end of a match. Maybe you just want to close the match. So where you are sort of dictates the flow of how you move from style to style. Um, and not only that, maybe you're trying to prove a point for your own particular scene. Maybe you're trying to prove a point about a character, and that can be a style. But complement it uh, with something that rounds out the space and initiative and range. Closing remarks. We've done it. We have made this a neat and tidy 2-hour presentation. Thank you all for staying with me. I hope you had a good time sitting in and understanding or gleaning whatever information you could from me. And I've really spent a lot of time in this classification, as it is one way to appreciate the game. And I do appreciate the game. I played it for a long time. I have to have some level of appreciation. I don't believe it to be a waste of time. You have to have, yeah, appreciation is important to what you do with your time. And to the people with whom you share that time. I appreciate the diversity of people who play. And one way to appreciate that is to classify them, is to understand, oh, hey, you're like that other guy. I've grouped you together. You're similar or you're different. And that's fun. I can discuss it. I can use that grammar to see the sames and differences and what makes life fun and flavorful with spice. Through classification, you can develop novel archetypes. You can do something new. A lot of people do things like tier chase or find or see knee and I want to play like knee or I want to play like Arslan. What an utter waste of time for you. Be you. Write the story. Write your story in Tekken. Maybe you never win Evo. I hate to break it to you, but it's highly unlikely. Just looking at the statistics and the numbers. So maybe you can change your victory condition, like Kalun Lao Chan. Maybe you just hit the snake edge. You just find your victory condition. And maybe the classification helps you figure out what that is. Victory is fleeting. There's tournaments all the time. People win. People are forgotten. Great people who just chase the W. They're lost to time. And the people with the staying power have style. And style is what gives you permanence. You remember the things that have been novel, that have been new, that have challenged you. You don't remember maybe the person who won Evo and in a particular year by being a Tekken 4 Jin. Maybe you don't remember that guy. It was Jin Kid, by the way, or Jackie Tran. Put some flair on it. Have some love for living your life, and you can do that with Tekken. You can, if you guard yourself. you can have something full with permanence and spice, with style. And maybe I've given you some tools here today to help you with that. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Based.
Thank you, old man Massacre.
Thank you.
I'm still gonna beat your ass though.
Thanks for the
I'm
information, my
gonna,
guy.
I'm gonna
Appreciate
drive
the
you into the ground the
presentation.
next time I fight you.
Look, quit
That's
capping.
great.
We all know that's cap.
Everyone sends their regards on Twitch and on the Discord. Many thanks all around.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, thank you. And this has been a symposium by Docmassacre, one of the many greats of Tekken, who has lasted for as long as he has because he is as stylish as he is. And so we thank you for your time, and this VOD will be on my Twitch, so you can watch yourself as we will be watching you for many years, who knows. So thank you. Any last questions for the doc while he's still here?
Are y'all gonna post this on YouTube too? Make sure y'all get y'all YouTube money too while y'all at it.
I will get my money up. I will. I will.
I was gonna say y'all posting on Twitch. I'm like Twitch is nice, but make sure y'all get that YouTube money.
Yes, yes, yes. We will definitely try and make some money off of this for the community. Yeah, for the one.
Just do it. Just
Perfect.
No.
Vamos lá. But it appears we have no questions. Jumanji mentioned he'd love to talk to you in a Discord call and pick your brain on some things if that's all right with you.
Unfortunately, at this particular juncture, I do need to call it an evening for myself, but I would love to entertain that. We can set up a time. Contact me on Twitter, and then we can make a time in the Discord for a chat.
I will drop Docmassacre's information in the Twitch and in the Discord. Feel free to check him out. He's also on YouTube. If you look up Ling Massacre, you'll find some of his older stuff in Tekken 6. Check out Bullet Train to Baikal. Check out all the good stuff. I'm telling you, you'll be inspired for many years to come. But that's all we have for today. Thank you all so much. And until next time, bye.
bye bye.
And that's scene. Good job, everyone.
Yay.
Cool.